Every Vondel Park sweat has secret tips and tricks that they use to drop high kill bombs. And I probably shouldn't share these with you because it could make it harder for me to get kills, but what the heck. Here are 17 tips that I use to get more kills, and make sure to stick around for the last one because it will literally make people think that you're cheating. Okay, so these first few tips are about fighting on buildings, and tip number 1 is to use the parachute dive. The normal way that most players jump off buildings is to press jump and then jump again to activate the parachute. But the problem is your operator doesn't go very far. If you instead dive off the building and immediately press jump to activate your parachute, your operator can fly much further. This allows you to make jumps that normally wouldn't be possible, which will help you surprise your enemies during gunfights. You can also use this technique to skip the mantling mechanic on the sides of buildings, which is great because when you mantle, you're completely defenseless against someone shooting at you. Now the next tip is don't be afraid to take fall damage when you're chasing someone. Parachuting off a roof to the ground takes a long time, and you can actually surprise a lot of people by dropping down on them quickly. I like to do this a lot when I get someone weak at the top of the stairs because they're completely confused with how fast you're able to get to them, so it's usually a pretty easy kill. But you do have to be a little careful with this because you will be weak in the gunfight. And if you make the mistake of falling from too high, you actually get a movement penalty and you can easily become the freest kill on the map. Which is why you should be looking for ways to minimize your fall damage if possible. Check this out. If I drop from this building like this, here's the amount of damage that I take. But if I simply bounce off this canopy, my damage reduces to this. And there's many of these little canopies and surfaces that you can bounce off around the map. So take some time to find them around the places that you like to land with your squad. But now, we've got to move on to something a little more serious. Campers. Okay, it's not that serious, it's just a part of the game, but man, they can be annoying. So these next couple of tips will help you take care of them. If I know someone is holding a roof and camping the entrances, I like to use smokes offensively. I simply toss a smoke up top, which then gives me cover to take a zip line or stairs and kill the camper in the confusion. I love to use this trick to get on roofs, but it can be effective anytime someone has you pinned down. Just smoke out their position, and now you're free to rotate. And another strategy that I use all the time is to take a redeploy drone instead of using the stairs. These zip lines aren't just for getting across the map. You can parachute off them at any point, and it's a great way to get on a rooftop quickly. In this clip, I know there's a guy camping in this building, and he thinks I'm gonna run in through the bottom. So by surprising him by dropping down from the top, I'm able to get a pretty easy kill. Now I know we can't always avoid the stairs, so these are two things that I do if I think someone is camping them. The first is to jump peak corners. It can be kind of slow doing this, but you'll thank yourself when you win the gunfight. And it works for two reasons. The first is if someone is aimed down sight waiting for you, you're gonna typically jump over their aim. So if they do start to shoot you, hopefully they'll be hitting low damage leg shots and you can take them out with higher damage chest shots. And the other reason is a bit more technical, but when you quickly jump around a corner, you'll see your opponent before he or she sees you because the data of you jumping has to travel through the internet to the game servers and then has to reach your opponent, which takes time. So this peeker's advantage will let you hit some shots before he or she realizes what's happening. This is why it can oftentimes pay off to be aggressive in first-person shooter games.
Oh, come on!
Okay, well sometimes it doesn't work because this game seems to have a mind of its own, but that's a risk you're gonna have to take to get more kills. But moving on. Now the next tip while you're running on the stairs is to spam your ADS button, which will look a lot like this. One of the easiest ways to kill someone in Warzone is to catch them in a tactical sprint, because it takes quite a bit of time for your character to stop sprinting and start shooting. So by spamming your ADS button, you minimize the chances that you'll get caught in a sprint. Now I know it's kind of slow to jump peak corners and to spam your ADS button on the stairs, so even I don't do it all the time. But I would definitely recommend to do it late game when people start to get really campy. But even after you make it up the stairs, you still have to get through a doorway to get onto the roof, which can be pretty sketchy. And that's why I like to prioritize the roofs of corner buildings when possible. Take a look at this. If I go up the stairs of this middle building, I now have to check and clear a wide angle where enemies can be. But if I go up a corner building, there's usually a much smaller area to cover. Now obviously campers can be in any corner of the map, but in general, I found this helps me to not get shot in the back like this guy. And once I'm on the roof, I try to stand on the ledge as a last resort. I can't tell you how many kills I get because people are standing on ledges and it takes forever for them to get back into cover when I'm shooting at them. And if you look around most ledges, there's oftentimes flower pots, benches, and things you can stand on to allow you to look over the edge without exposing your entire character's hitbox. This will make you a harder target to hit, and you can also duck into cover much quicker. But if you do need to stand on a ledge, just make sure you've had your caffeine. Now, if you're on a roof, you have to know that people are going to challenge your position. There's going to be a lot of times when someone tries to sneak up the stairs to get to you. And one thing they almost never expect is for you to burst through the door and kill them. Now, this works well when you're breaking down a door to go inside because it's easy to find your target in a small area. But this definitely does not work nearly as well for going outside. There's a lot more area to cover, so it's much more difficult. Instead, I recommend bursting down the door to get peeker's advantage, but then stay within the door frame. This gives you an escape if you don't guess correctly where your enemy is, and then you can re-challenge. But if you do take damage and you're being hard chased down the stairs, one thing I like to do is stop on a random landing. Your opponent will be so focused on chasing you that by the time they've realized you're in the corner, they've already committed to continuing down the stairs. This will give you time to hit your shots without taking any damage. And if you do it right, this will be a live look into your opponent's gaming room. Okay, these next two tips have to do with zip lines. Did you know that you can skip the long detachment animation at the tops of buildings? It takes a bit of practice, but if you jump and hold forward near the top, your character will completely skip the animation and you can immediately sprint out of the zip line, which is great because you normally get a major speed penalty at the top and you're an easy target for enemies. Now, one thing to note is that the distance from the rope to the ledge isn't the same on every building, so some zips are easy to do and others are really difficult, which means you should test these out for yourself at your favorite buildings. But it works because of the next tip. You can attach and detach at any point on the zip line. This allows us to skip the animation at the top, but it also allows us to parachute in from other buildings and immediately grab the zip line without hitting the ground. I do this all the time to get around the map faster and avoid getting caught on the ground in a gunfight. Now, a Vondel tips video would not be complete without a few water tips.
No!
Yeah, I hate the water too, and I try to avoid it at all costs, but that's not always possible. So here are a few tips to help you stay alive. I think a lot of people already know that pistols are the only guns you can shoot underwater. All other weapons have to be shot on the surface. But what not as many people know is that with these other guns, you still can't shoot below your character. There's a cutoff angle. So if someone has you trapped in the water and they don't have a pistol, you can actually swim beneath them, which could buy you some time to figure out a strategy to get away. And speaking of getting away, you want to make sure that you're using jump and crouch to change your depth in the water. Jump takes you to the surface and crouch takes you further under. This will help you navigate better underwater and you don't have to mess up your centering by swimming like a dolphin. And once you're ready to get out of the water, you should be using the water hop. Once again, animations in this game take forever. You can completely skip the water mantle by leaving space between yourself and the ledge, looking up, and then spamming your jump button. It takes some practice getting the right distance from the ledge, but it is so much faster. And finally, the number one tip that you need to be doing and will make other people think that you're cheating is you need to be live pinging your enemies during gunfights. It literally gives you wall hacks. With how busy this map is, there's tons of obstacles that make it hard to track your opponents, but live pinging them makes it really easy. I use a back button on my controller to do this, but if you don't have one or don't play claw, I highly recommend you assign it to L3 or R3. It really is that powerful. And if you are in the market for a new controller and want to use the brand that I recommend, you can check out the link in my description and use code DREAMSTRIKE for 5% off all Hyper controller orders. But if you're still looking for some more Warzone tips, you can check out my guide on how to fight teams when you're outnumbered right here. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.